So the director of the CIA heard about a woman in California. She gave him the latitude and longitude of the plane's whereabouts. We located the plane where she said it was. And that's the only time that I have ever experienced something that was inexplicable while I was present.
Introduction. General. The following definitions and descriptions are provided to acquaint the reader with the remote viewing phenomenon and a typical remote viewing session. Definitions. Remote viewing, or RV. The name of a method of psychoenergetic perception, a term coined by SRI International and defined as the acquisition and description by mental means of information blocked from ordinary perception by distance, shielding, or time. Coordinate remote viewing, or CRV. The process of remote viewing using geographic coordinates for cueing or prompting. Remote viewer. Often referred to in the text simply as viewer, the remote viewer is a person who employs his or her mental faculties to perceive and obtain information to which he or she has no other access and of which he or she has no previous knowledge concerning persons, places, events, or objects separated from them by time, distance, or other intervening obstacles. Monitor. The individual who assists the viewer in a remote viewing session. The monitor provides the coordinate, observes the viewer to help ensure he or she stays in proper structure, as discussed later. Records relevant session information, provides appropriate feedback when required, and provides objective analytic support to the viewer as necessary. The monitor plays an especially important role in training beginning viewers. Descriptions. Remote viewing session. In a remote viewing session, an individual or viewer attempts to acquire and describe by mental means alone information about a designated site. The viewer is not told what the site is that must be described, but is provided a cue or prompt which designates the site. Session dynamics. In conducting a coordinate remote viewing session, a remote viewer and a monitor begin by seating themselves at the opposite ends of a table in a special remote viewing room equipped with paper and pens, a tape recorder, and a TV camera, which either allows for recording for documentation or monitoring by individuals outside the room. The room is homogeneously colored, acoustically tiled, and featureless, with light controlled by a dimmer so that environmental distractions can be minimized. The session begins when the monitor provides cueing or prompting information, geographic coordinates in this case, to the remote viewer. The remote viewer is given no additional identifying information and at this point has no conscious knowledge of the actual site. For training purposes, the monitor is allowed to know enough about the site to enable him or her to determine when accurate versus inaccurate information is being provided. The session then proceeds with the monitor repeating the prompting information at appropriate intervals and providing necessary feedback. The remote viewer generates verbal responses and sketches until a coherent response to the overall task requirement emerges. Post-session dynamics. After the session is over, the remote viewer and monitor obtain specific information about the site in picture or descriptive form. The remote viewer and monitor then discuss the session results. Some background. In early 1980, and SRI International, SRI, a subcontractor, developed a training procedure known as coordinate remote viewing to satisfy R&D demands on SRI to enhance the reliability or scientific replicability of remote viewing. The subcontractor's approach to improving the reliability of RV was to focus on the control of those factors that, in his view, tend to introduce noise into the RV product: imaginative, environmental, and interviewer overlays. The basic components of this training procedure consist of the following. 1. Repeated site address or geographic coordinate presentation with quick reaction response by the remote viewing, coupled with a restrictive format for reporting perceived information to minimize imaginative overlays. 2. The use of a specially designed, acoustically tiled, relatively featureless, homogeneously colored viewing chamber to minimize environmental overlays. And 3. The adoption of a strictly prescribed, limited interviewer pattern to minimize interviewer overlays. The training procedure requires that the trainee learn a progressive multi-stage acquisition process postulated to correspond to increased contact with the site. At present, there are 6 stages of training. In general, these stages progress as follows. Stage 1 sites. Large structures like islands, mountains, deserts. Stage 2 sites. Sites of quality sensory value, sites which are uniquely describable through touch, taste, sound, color, or odor, such as glaciers, volcanoes, industrial plants, etc. Stage 3 sites. Sites possessing significant dimensional characteristics such as buildings, bridges, airfields, etc. Stage 4 sites, for which the trainee begins to form qualitative mental percepts, technical areas, military fueling, research areas, etc. Stage 5 sites, for which the trainee learns to interrogate qualitative mental percepts in an attempt to product analytical target descriptions. Details like aircraft tracking radar, biomedical research facility, tank production plants, etc. Stage 6 sites, which involve the trainee indirect three-dimensional assessment and modeling of the site and or the relationship of the site elements to one another. Things like airplanes inside one of 3 camouflaged hangars, or a military compound with a command building, barracks, motor pool, and underground weapons storage area. The following document has been prepared to serve as a comprehensive explanation of the theory and mechanics of CRV as developed by SRI. It is intended for individuals who have no in-depth understanding of the technology and as a guide for future training programs. Particular attention should be paid to the glossary at the end of the document and to the terms as defined in the text, as they are the only acceptable definitions to be used when addressing the methodology presented.